Welcome to a special episode of On the Lake. I'm Ben Bykoff. On December 31st, 2023, the Boys Line community suddenly lost a beloved member of the Laker family, as longtime English teacher Beau Dagenais tragically passed away at the age of 42. Mr. Dodge, as the students called him, was one of the most passionate, friendly, and impactful teachers a student could have during their time here at BL. We reached out to the community to help honor and pay tribute to Mr. Dodge, and we were overwhelmed with the response. We had so many people contribute, wanting to share their story about how Mr. Dodge affected them. From alumni to parents, current faculty and staff, everyone tells a story about how Mr. Dodge touched their lives. Please enjoy part 2 of On the Lake, a tribute to Beau Dagenais.
He was one of the few faculty members that always let people know what he's thinking. Wasn't afraid to tell people how what he was thinking about, and every time you talk to him, it was always hi with a smile on his face or something to brighten up your day. Even when I didn't know him, I would greet him, and I'd feel better about myself throughout the day because I had greeted Mr. Dodge. He just brings so much love, and he had bring so much love and energy towards everybody in the school.
Just from last Saturday, the amount of alumni that showed up, there were so many of them. Filled the stands and all the seats. So I think that kind of explains itself. But just like when you're asking older kids, like, hey, what classes should I take next year? Mr. Dodge always came up as like one of the classes that you need to take because like it's just such a great experience.
Mr. Dodge has meant a lot for us at this BL community. He's been with Mr. Post, our headmaster, since he came here. It's 19 or 20 years ago. And he's just put an impact on everyone's soul here.
Everyone that has taken one of his classes knows like he makes sure everyone's engaged and everyone's talking. It's always a good time to be in one of Mr. Dodge's classes just because of the inclusiveness of it.
I think that he means just that, spreading happiness and joy, and he obviously was a huge loss to the BL community. For guys that won't be able to have him, and then for all the alumni that were fortunate enough to have him.
I think he's meant a lot, personally, because he's always been someone that you can talk to, and he's always listened, and he'll always be there for anyone who wants to talk to him.
From the stories that I've heard, I've known that he's been here for a long time, and every senior class has nothing but positive things to say about him. I know that he has a great impact on helping students with their senior speeches, so I know that he is very respected and, a great person for BL.
When you look at just the impact of how sad everybody is, not just the students, but alum, the teachers, it's really obvious of the impact that he had. And I just think that he was so happy all the time, and that was contagious, and it spread throughout the entire school.
I think he absolutely lit up that entire first floor entrance area. His energy was just infectious. You couldn't walk past him without him putting a smile on your face.
He's really meant a lot to all the teachers, just as being a mentor and a friend, especially for all the teachers that may be a little bit younger and younger to the school and need help or advice. They could always go to him and ask him a question, and he'd always be willing to answer it and help you to the best of his ability.
Seeing like how people reacted to his passing is just seeing how it affected everybody, the teachers, the students, like the alumni coming back. It's like a big deal.
He always had a smile on, and even if he was having a rough day, he wasn't like irritable. He was patient, and he works hard to make sure everybody knows that he's gonna be there. He's fine.
Mr. Dodge meant a lot to BL. I think he has a son in the lower school, and I think he played a huge role, in him being there, obviously. I remember him talking about his son Owen's tie ceremony and how much that meant to him. He meant a lot to the senior retreat program. I know he hasn't gone in a couple of years, but he loves talking about it, and he really emphasized how much that meant to us as seniors. And obviously the senior speech program, he helped revise student speeches with Miss Molling, and I think he was able to touch so many different people.
I think he meant everything that BL stood for, to be honest. Everything about Esekwambaderi and our core values like compassion, honesty, and courage. I think probably out of anyone at BL, he probably showed the most out of all three. And he came to school every day with a smile on his face, even though his home life or something might have went wrong that day or that morning, and he never let it get to him. So I think that is what we really needed from him at BL.
The story I want to tell you about is a time when I was a junior, and at that time, Mr. Dodge was actually clearing out his office. He had a lot of old books and a lot of things scattered in this old office back before they did the renovation of the current building. It looks beautiful now. But back then, his office was all cluttered. There were old things everywhere. His master's degree famously was sitting on the ground, not hanging up, and he had all sorts of posters around the room and couches and everything. People would gather in this room. He was giving away these books, and he had all these things he was clearing out and putting into boxes, and he looks at me and he says, "Matt, I want to give you something." And I was like, what could he possibly be giving me? And I'm like, what even is this? Like all this, like I'm seeing him put all this stuff away. He's like, "I got books for you." And I was like, I got a lot of books. I don't need books. And he says, "Matt, it's like Barnes and Noble, but better." And he gives me all these books, and I'm like, all right, I can't refuse this now. And I must have filled maybe my entire backpack and then some with these books. He evenly split the books between myself and another very distinguished student, a guy named Jimmy McGee, and he basically distributed the boxes worth of books between the two of us. We took them home, and I still have them to this day. I've read a good many of them, and they're some of my favorite books I've ever read. It was a real gift to actually have something like that. It's something I remembered like really deeply. It's definitely one of the more memorable experiences that I had at Boys Latin overall. It was great that I got to have it with him, and his gift in sharing books, and not just not even just telling or teaching, but actually giving those books to me was something really valuable. He did that all through his AP Lit class. We could take home all of the books we got from that class. That you don't usually get to do that in most English classes. And again, every one of those books are books that I still have to this very day. They're sitting on my shelf in my bedroom in my apartment for most of them. Definitely an impactful and definitely a very memorable part of my Boys Latin time.
Dear Ms. Dagenais, I was deeply saddened to hear about the loss of your husband and beloved teacher of mine this past week. Mr. Dodge was a great role model and an influence during a period where many teenagers are trying to figure out their past, present, and future. During my time with him, Mr. Dagenais shared his love for goofball comedies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Caddyshack. He always found a way to relate some piece of literature or media we were analyzing with a Bob Dylan track, coolly weaving music and literature. Although, at times, we suspected he may just needed 5 minutes to himself with his favorite musician while we were acting up. His informal teaching style, focusing on discussion and analysis, left a lasting impact on me, and I'm sure many others. He will be missed. Sincerely, Taylor Steve, class of 2009.
Hey, come and buy some, support One Love.
Man. All right, how much are these? Perfect.
Cash you can do over there.
I got Venmo.
This year's BL One Love Bake Sale was able to generate an all-time high of just over $500. This money will go towards the overall One Love budget. This allows the club to put together a great One Laker One Love Day, with the money going towards t-shirts, materials, supplies, teaching aids, and more. The One Love Bake Sale helps the club fund TD Van Week, along with all their other activities that keep the Boys Latin One Love Club present in our community.
While Mr. Dodge taught in the high school, his impact was seen throughout the campus, including the lower school, where he got to be more than just a teacher. Mr. Dodge's son is a young Laker here at BL. We will now hear from lower school teachers Kate Lynch, Jenna Kelly, and Ann Young about the effect Mr. Dodge had on the littlest Lakers and their teachers.
It was great to get to interact with Beau as a parent in my classroom, because there were a lot of similarities between the teacher Beau and the parent Beau.
He taught my son Ryan in AP Lit, who's a senior, and I teach his 5th grade son for reading language arts. So I felt like we had this symbiotic relationship this year.
An amazing dad, a great colleague, and a very powerful teacher to my son.
He just got pure joy out of listening to me talk about his son as a learner and as a student at Boys Latin. He would literally lean in and listen to every word I said about his son, and you could tell he was just so amazed that he got to be a father, got to be a parent, and watch his son grow. Having someone on campus like Beau really made a difference to me as a colleague and as a professional. He had that academic drive to make sure that he and his students were reaching for high standards, but he also really enjoyed the kids. He really enjoyed the connection. And when it comes down to it, on the toughest days where it's hard to get up and come to work, he is a person who I look to give me that inspiration and that extra oomph, remembering these are children and these are lives that we're having an impact on. Every time I saw Beau on campus, it lifted me.
Beau always had his door open, his arms open, smile. He found the best in each boy, which sometimes is hard to do, but he found it, and he would bring it out of them, and he would be real. And that's what I loved the most about him. He was real, and his laugh was infectious. I think a lot of people can try to imitate him, but he's one of a kind.
Every conversation he had with you, he was so present. He wasn't thinking about what happened 5 minutes ago. He wasn't thinking about what's going to happen a week from today. He was focused on you, eye contact, both ears, and not talking, just listening. In his 42 years of life, he has made such a huge impact on so many boys. Most people live a lifetime, an entire lifetime, 80 to 100 years, trying to do what he was able to do in 15 years of teaching here.
If there's a word I can think of to describe Beau, it would be delight. He seemed to get an authentic delight out of being here on campus, spending his time with his colleagues, and most importantly, spending time with his students. And that's what I hope to carry forth about Beau.
We've heard so many times his legacy carries on. He's not ever going to be forgotten.
Out of all the teachers I've had throughout both grade school and college, Mr. Dagenais has had the most fundamental impact on me and how I engage with the world. I took his AP Literature class senior year, during which we read some of Plato's work. In his text, Plato exposes the reader to the Socratic method, a framework for discussing problems and coming to conclusions about what is true and what is not. Mr. Dage not only helped us understand the Socratic method, but used it as our framework for class. To this day, it was the only class I've ever been in where students would ask other students questions, not to learn or understand factual matters, but as a method to advance the collective conversation we were all having. This framework and the behaviors it encouraged would result in truly magical moments during class, where students would come together to grand conclusions about what we were reading, but with light guidance from Mr. Dage at times. It really felt like he showed us how we could make 1 + 1 = 3. My business partners and I still use this framework to this day to solve our problems and discover universal truths about how the world works. We prize the Socratic method so much that we made it one of our 6 core values as a company, and we have Mr. Dage to thank for that. Spencer Steve, class of 2013.
He was so above and beyond this world by being so on it and ingrained in it in the simplest, easiest way. You know, he just made you feel like what you had to say was the most important thing in the world. And you know, for the time you were with him, that you were the most important person in the world. And not in a way that when you don't have him around, you then feel helpless, but he actually did that in a way that when you don't have him around, you feel stronger than ever and as self-sufficient And that belief he instilled stays with you, and it stayed with me. So, so while I miss him a lot, and while I wish I could go back, talk to him, and feel that understanding and that importance, and him really seeking to understand what I have to say, and kind of giving me validation and confidence. I also know, I can look inside myself for that because of him. So, yeah, that's my story about Mr. Dodge, and in the simplest way possible, I think it shows everything about him.
I wasn't lucky enough to have Mr. Dagenais as a teacher, but I've heard plenty of stories from classmates of how funny, interesting, and caring he was. The tribute episode of On the Lake gave everyone who watches it the same feeling of knowing Mr. Dodge without actually knowing him. His effect was, and is, that powerful. We went around the halls and asked Lakers what they thought about the episode on this segment of From a Lakers Perspective.
Nice to see sort of how the Mr. Dagenais affected some of the alumni and see them come back and talk about how much they loved him and how much he meant in their lives.
I thought it was great. I think it's great that the community really shows awareness for this and is just there for the people.
It was a great tribute to Mr. Dodge and what he did for the school and the students here and the students in the past. I just think it was great.
It was really good. I think we did a really good, you guys did a really good job of everything. It's hard to get it in one video, and obviously you said you couldn't, and obviously there's gonna have to be more videos. It really helped show the impact of Mr. Dodge, especially while I was in his advisory for 2.5 years. So I think it was, and two, for me, I haven't really thought about it too much recently. I think it was good to kind of get that back in my mind again.
I thought it was a great opportunity again for the whole community to see the impact on kids of this teacher. And I think that it's important that younger students, I think the earlier they can really appreciate the sense of the upper school, the more they will get out of their experience. So here you had seniors talking about this beloved teacher in a way that to me signals underneath it all what matters in this community. And it was great. And there's nothing Beau would like more than to have the sense that he had for students celebrated by them.
I think that was one of the main reasons I came to the school. I saw how tight-knit the community was, and it's just awesome to have.
It's a great thing for the BL community because when you have those type of relationships, you really get to connect more, not even on an academic level, but on a personal level, because when you have those type of relationships with a teacher, you can understand more about where they're coming from and the reason why they're teaching you, and also understand the material more from that.
Having a teacher that you're able to talk to in a more formal setting, not like a teacher setting where you're walking in and you act as you have to be perfect in front of them. Mr. Dodge, I was more free in his class than I was in any other class. And I think having that relationship with teachers is good, and he established that really quickly. And I think just too, the positivity that he spread around every place, it really spread everywhere. So I think it's good to have those kind of people because everybody can benefit from somebody like that.
We give kids authentic support to help them become who they're supposed to be. So I think having a teacher like Beau and other teachers in this building and adults who truly believe in kids, all kinds of kids, strengthens them and empowers them to become their best self. And I think there's nothing better than you can give a young person is to applaud them for who they are. And Beau did that.
Having teachers that are really invested in you and your goals and you being your best person, I think is probably the main factor that drove my family and I to come to BL, because I feel like it's a lot more personal, and they sort of imprint their ways on you more if they take it more personally?
For what I heard, I think it would have been a great experience because I enjoy English, and from what I heard from my other students, like the other students right here, he was a great teacher. He really pushes you to contribute and exercise your ideas.
I'm Gina Moling, and I've worked with Beau probably since the very beginning. And he and I partnered with the senior speech program. So Beau and I really worked hand in hand. Professionally, I would say dependable, wickedly smart, and very empathetic. And personally, he was such a good friend. He was warm, he was thoughtful. Again, lots of empathy. I loved the way he thought, had a really, truly strong command of the language. Beau provided a security blanket, an emotional security blanket. It was known, and we would decide. I'd be somewhat the bad cop, you know, where is it, when it, because I was scheduling, and he was, tell me what you're thinking, how can we perfect it, you see? So it was interesting how we went and needed to go about it very differently. Yet he provided a security blanket, a safe ear, empathy, compassion, but with great knowledge, great command. He just had his finger on the pulse of it at all times, and he offered them great security and a good ear. I mean, writing is thinking, it's feeling and putting it on a page. It's a very intimate craft, and he just knew how to get at it so successfully. And he was likable. People liked him. I would happen to think that his legacy as a teacher would be to always lean in, to treat each student as an individual, to respect and listen, and to always be open to their needs, their thoughts, their mistakes through the craft of reading and writing and thinking. And I think he was very, very strong at that. And he had the sensitivity and the capacity to, I don't want to say be their friend, yet be their mentor, be someone whom they could trust, they could go to with great ease. So he really had that capacity to be open, empathetic, compassionate, and to understand with no judgment. Speaking of legacy, I think the senior speech represented the best of Beau in his belief of finding truth and humanity in the written word, and to think and to feel and to process and then write it and command with the writing and the craft of writing and then being able to present it. I really hope that each senior from this moment forward really remember his name as a dedicated teacher.
Mr. Dodge was a force here on campus, an influence, a mentor, and a friend. He will be missed but not forgotten. The BL community is forever grateful for everything Mr. Dodge was and everything he gave to us. Thank you to everyone who contributed to this episode. We could not have done it without you. Well, that'll do it for this special episode of On the Lake. For everyone here at BLTV, I'm Ben Bykov. Thank you for watching.
All right, I'm ready. All right. All right. So there's this bear, all right, and he walks into a bar, and he walks up to the bartender, orders a beer, and then he orders a burger afterwards. And the bartender looks at him and he says, "Why the big pause?" And the bear says, "I was born with them. I've had them my whole life."